I was completely taken aback when my husband abruptly stated that unless the ownership of our house was transferred to his name, he would consider a divorce. This house is more than just a building to me. It's a treasure chest of precious family memories, and the thought of losing it is unbearable. Despite my deep emotional attachment to our home, my husband's threat felt like a manipulation of my sentiments. In my distress, I turned to my father for support. My name is Patricia, and I'm a 32-year-old full-time housewife. I've devoted my life to managing our household since marrying Terry 3 years ago. I left my job to fully support our home life, while Terry has been the primary earner. Our life, however, took a difficult turn following the death of Terry's father, which unexpectedly led to his mother moving in with us. The news of her arrival was sprung on me just a day in advance, which was disconcerting enough. And just when I was trying to adapt to this sudden change, Terry nonchalantly mentioned that my mother would also be moving in the very next day. He dropped this news casually as he came home from work, asking me to make the necessary preparations. I was stunned. I had assumed her visit was just that, a visit. But no, she was here to stay, and the decision had been made without any consultation with me. Upon her arrival, my mother-in-law walked in with an air of dissatisfaction. She immediately questioned why I hadn't picked her up from the station, chiding that it was common sense to do so given her journey. Caught off guard, I explained that I hadn't known her exact arrival time, to which she retorted that I should have called to check. Her remarks were sharp. "You're so thoughtless," she scolded, adding, "This is why they say some daughter-in-laws are useless and inconsiderate." Despite being a guest, she settled heavily onto the sofa, her displeasure evident. From the moment she walked in, she acted as if she owned the place. I was astounded. From that day on, her snide remarks grew even more frequent and biting. Each morning, as soon as my husband Terry left for work, she began her barrage. "Patricia, why are you just sitting there? Do the dishes. You should have finished the laundry this morning. That's just common sense." I would apologize and tell her, "I'll do the laundry once the dishes are done." She'd snap back, "You have the wrong priorities. In my house, it was a rule to do laundry right after breakfast. Haven't your parents taught you not to make excuses?" I had established my daily routine long before she arrived, but Kayla seemed unable to grasp this. It didn't matter if I followed her instructions to the letter. She would find fault regardless and complain incessantly. The hours I spent alone with her during the day were particularly challenging. One day, I had a revelation on how to escape this living nightmare. I remembered the house I had inherited from my father. He had retired early a few months ago, and my parents had started a new life in the countryside, passing their house on to me. Fortunately, this house wasn't too far from our current apartment, and Terry and I had already discussed moving there eventually. Pushed to my limits by living with my mother-in-law, I decided it was time to broach the subject of moving sooner rather than later. "Terry, can we talk for a moment?" I asked one evening. "What's up? Did something happen?" he replied. "Do you remember the house my father gave us? What do you think about moving there?" "Oh, that house. We did talk about moving there someday. Why the sudden decision?" "Well, I've been having some difficulties with your mother. She might not have mentioned anything, but I can't bear living with her anymore. That's why I'm seriously considering moving. Considering the new place isn't too far, I suggested we move there, allowing your mother to stay in the current apartment." Surprisingly, Terry agreed to the move. After informing Kayla, we decided to make the move a week later. Honestly, I anticipated some opposition from her, but she accepted our decision with a big smile. "Goodbye, Terry and Patricia. I'm so sorry for the sudden decision to move," she said cheerfully. "Don't worry about it," Terry replied, relieved. "It's generous of your dad to have given us the house," Kayla remarked with a smile. "Thank you, and come visit us sometime soon." Of course, we're not that far away, and I'd love it if you came to visit us regularly, too, she added, her voice filled with a hopeful expectation. I will, I promised her. After wrapping up our conversation, my husband and I moved to our new home. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, thrilled at the thought that I would no longer have to tolerate Kayla's biting remarks. In our new home, I could finally live freely, setting my schedule and routines. Initially, I had been worried about how Kayla might react, but discussing the move with Terry had calmed my nerves. However, this newfound peace was short-lived. Even though the distance from my mother-in-law allowed me to reduce my stress levels, Terry began coming home late. It wasn't just occasional late nights. There were entire nights when he didn't come home at all. He defended his actions by saying he was concerned about his mother, but his frequent unannounced absences began to disrupt my life significantly. This can't continue, I thought to myself. One day, I decided it was time for a serious conversation. Terry, you've been coming home really late these days, and sometimes you don't come home at all. Is that so? He replied casually. I'm just worried about my mother. That's not the issue here, I responded firmly. At the very least, you should inform me beforehand if you're going to be late so that I don't wait up for you or prepare dinner unnecessarily. Since you're a housewife and you're always at home, you can just eat the leftovers for lunch the next day, right? He suggested thoughtlessly. So you're implying I should just accept everything silently because I'm a housewife? Are you saying we shouldn't even discuss this? Isn't it true? Housewives just have it easy at home, he retorted, which shocked me. What are you even saying? I countered, hurt and frustrated. Besides, I'm concerned about leaving my mother alone. Amy will be coming back soon, and I need to discuss some things with her. Wait, Amy is coming back? What do you need to discuss with her? Curious and increasingly anxious, I pressed him for more information. We're moving Amy in here to live with us. She's always wanted a big house like the one she had abroad. That's why I thought it would be a good idea to let her stay in this house, Terry explained nonchalantly. What? I exclaimed, completely taken aback by the sudden news. Is my sister-in-law going to live in our house? I was overwhelmed, struggling to process this unexpected turn of events. I had just begun to enjoy a reprieve from Kayla's relentless critiques when a new challenge presented itself. My husband announced that his sister Amy was going to live in our house. I was stunned. This house wasn't just any property. It was the home I inherited from my father, and it felt entirely wrong to just hand it over. It's the only sizable house that would satisfy Amy, my husband reasoned. The apartment where we used to live, where my mother now stays, is too cramped for 4 people. But I never planned for us to live with Amy. Instead, I intend to give this house to her, he declared. What? Why? I gasped, barely able to grasp his logic. Because we plan to move back in with my mother. Amy can use this house freely, he explained. His proposal was unreasonable, and I felt like I might faint. Despite my clear insistence that I had no desire to live with my mother-in-law again, my husband grew increasingly irate. Can't you be a little more considerate? You live because of my support, so just do as I say. This house is wasted on you, he snapped. Why should I give it to Amy? This house is precious to me. It was inherited from my father, I protested. I've already told Amy I've got her a large house. It's too late to say otherwise now, he continued as if the matter was already decided without my consent. You've decided all of this without even consulting me? I can't accept it, I replied, trying to maintain my composure. Enough, calm down and think about it. I'll go back to my mother's for a while, he said angrily before slamming the door and leaving. Alone, I was left in tears, struggling to comprehend why my husband would make such unilateral decisions. It was inconceivable that he intended to give away the house I had inherited from my father to my sister-in-law. Every day thereafter, he sent me messages, asking if I had calmed down and urging me to come back soon. Each time I firmly reiterated that I had no intention of complying with his plans. Then, one day, he dropped another bombshell over the phone. "Hey, Patricia, when will you come here and live with me? Stop nagging. I've said it so many times. I have no intention of living with Kayla, moving there and giving this house to Amy. I've already told Amy. Stop being selfish." His words left me more resolved than ever to stand my ground, shocked at his blatant disregard for my feelings and our shared life. "She might be returning this week, so apparently there's no time to delay." "Why should I give up my house for your family? I inherited this house from my father. Don't make decisions on your own. Who do you think you're talking to?" I protested, my voice quivering with frustration. Even my mother was furious about the situation, echoing my sentiments. "That's not my problem. You're ignoring my feelings," I responded firmly. My husband let out a heavy sigh over the phone, his frustration palpable. Then, he said something that shook me to the core. "If you can't listen to me, then let's get a divorce. Hand over the house to Amy and leave by tomorrow." At that moment, any remaining affection I had for my husband evaporated. The idea of him using divorce as a threat, without any regard for my feelings, was utterly despicable. I couldn't possibly forgive him for wielding such a threat. With a tone laced with arrogance, he continued, "Listen, if you don't leave by tomorrow, I'll divorce you. That's it." "Wait, are you serious?" I asked, incredulous. "Of course I am. You don't have a choice. What will you do if you, a housewife, get divorced? You can't survive," he taunted. "Enough. I get it," I said sharply. "Hurry up and move over here. My mother is looking forward to disciplining you." He hung up the phone with a tone of confidence, assuming I would comply. After that call, I was resolute. I decided to seek help from my father to devise a plan. By the next day, everything was ready for my move. I replied calmly when he inquired, "By the way, I'm curious, when will Amy be back?" "She'll be back tomorrow." "Why are you so obsessed with Amy?" he questioned, a hint of suspicion in his voice. "Between you and me, she seems to have made quite a sum from stock investments," I mentioned casually. "I see. So, if you provide her with a house, maybe you can ask for financial help," he suggested, trying to rationalize his stance. "That's so like you," I retorted. "Anyway, you need to leave that house by today. It's inconvenient for all of us." "Don't worry, I've already moved," I stated coolly. "What do you mean?" My husband seemed genuinely surprised. "I knew it. You don't want to divorce me, do you?" "Naturally, without an income, you can't survive," he claimed, still underestimating my resolve and independence. "All of this is coming to an end. We're still legally married, and that's the only reason we're even having this conversation now," I told him, my voice steady and resolute. "Wait, what?" "I can only think about divorce now," I added, clearly shocking him with my directness. "You promised to move out of that house and live with me, but you've already moved?" "What are you saying?" he stammered, his voice laden with confusion and rising panic. "Of course, I won't live in a house with a husband who decides everything on his own and a domineering mother-in-law. Why are you including me in your plans for Amy?" I retorted. "You promised to move out for Amy," he tried to argue, clinging to his previous demands. "I said I've already moved, didn't I? Enough with the jokes. Where are you now?" he asked, his tone becoming increasingly panicky, clearly losing his composure. "I'm at my parents' house. I moved to their rural home. I don't plan on returning to where you are," I explained calmly, delivering the news that I knew would unsettle him further. "You should have told me that sooner," he replied, a hint of relief but also frustration in his voice. "If you truly want to give the house to Amy, here's the deal. It's on the market for $520,000. Buy it for that amount and then hand it over to her," I stated firmly. "Are you joking? I'm serious. The house was still in my father's name, so I asked him to sell it," I continued, clarifying my actions and intentions. "My father always said if something happens, I should contact him. I could live in the house or sell it as I see fit, and he would help me." As a result of the valuation, a price of $520,000 was proposed, which I gladly agreed to, and we put the house on the market immediately. My husband probably never anticipated that I would take such a decisive step. "Why are you doing this without asking me? This is unforgivable, he spat out, consumed with anger and disbelief. I'm not asking for, nor do I need your approval. We're getting divorced soon anyway. I don't care. Do you understand your position? You'll be the one in trouble if we divorce since you don't have an income. You're just a housewife. He tried to belittle me, assuming that I would be helpless without him. I'd rather struggle on my own than be with you forever, I responded firmly, cutting off his attempts to manipulate me. Listen, Amy will be coming back soon, he started, but I was no longer interested in his plans or threats. I was set on my path, determined to reclaim my independence and dignity. I mentioned before that I was counting on Amy's financial contributions, didn't I? So, if you want Amy to have that house, you can purchase it for $520,000. That is, of course, if you're able to, I pointed out firmly. What? That's impossible. If Amy has indeed made a fortune from her investments, I don't see why she couldn't afford it, he retorted, clearly caught off guard. I'm not sure exactly how much she made, but to say she can't afford it just sounds like you're making excuses, I replied, not giving in to his lack of accountability or apologies while maintaining his assertive attitude. Realizing that further discussion was pointless, I decided to make my stance crystal clear. I'm finished with this chaos you've created. Did you think threatening me with a divorce would make me surrender the house? If you assumed that being a housewife means I'd simply obey, you're deeply mistaken. Let's just calm down and discuss this, he suggested, trying to soften the tone. I am calm. It seems like you're the one panicking. I won't let myself be controlled by you or your family any longer. Go back to your mother. Stay out of my life, I exclaimed loudly, my voice ringing clear enough for anyone nearby to hear, and then I abruptly ended the call. Fed up with the constant tumultuous conversations, I blocked his number. I promptly sought legal advice and pursued a divorce. It took some time, but eventually the divorce was granted, recognizing the faults on my husband's part. He and Kayla continued residing in that small apartment. Meanwhile, Amy, unable to secure the large house she desired, expressed her frustration, claiming it wasn't what she was promised, and she returned overseas. My ex-husband's hopes of leveraging his sister's financial success crumbled, and he found himself struggling to manage financially, burdened with the responsibility of alimony and supporting his mother. Living with such a self-centered mother, his prospects of a thriving future seemed bleak. In contrast, I relocated to the countryside, enjoying tranquil days with my parents. I began a new job as a clerical worker at a local company, thanks to a neighbor's recommendation. With this job, I found financial independence and contentment. I decided to stay close to my parents for the foreseeable future, cherishing the opportunity to give back to them for all their support and love.